Despite his efforts, Alec Baldwin can't escape the controversy surrounding the accidental shooting of Halyna Hutchins, and now the guy is facing charges. Stay tuned to get all the deets, starting with the charges that are being considered. After a long investigation into the October 2021 shooting of Halyna Hutchins, it looks like prosecutors are getting ready to take positions in court. They announced recently that they're looking to charge the actor, along with on-set armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter. For those of y'all who are following your first manslaughter trial, the terms refer to a type of killing where the offender isn't completely responsible for the death, but is nevertheless criminally liable for what happened. Involuntary manslaughter, like the charge being leveled against Baldwin, is a kind of accidental killing. Basically, the crime here is that Baldwin should have known better than to act as he did. He's being accused essentially of unsafe practices and firearm handling that led to him to kill Halyna without, of course, intending to. As I'm sure you can figure out, a similar claim is being made against Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, whose failure to do her job led to the death of the cinematographer. Charges are charges, and whatever the outcome ends up being, this is bound to be the trial of the century that we seem to have once every decade. And while Hannah should start saying her prayers that she doesn't end up with too harsh of a sentence, all eyes are on Alec Baldwin. Can the controversial actor beat the charges? That's the question I'm looking to explore today. And naturally, I'm going to start with the facts. The most irrelevant detail in all this is that Rust was the movie that has been dragged into this situation. It's a Western that was conceived by writer and director Joel Souza, along with Baldwin himself. Produced by Alec's company with a budget of under $10 million, it was described as Baldwin's passion project. A key detail of the story is that Alec Baldwin and his company are producers of the movie. That gives Baldwin more responsibility for stuff than the average actor. He and his company are funding the movie to an extent, and they're the ones in charge of setting schedules, hiring staff, and planning the shoot. One of the staff members that ended up on Rust was, of course, Hannah. The daughter of veteran armorer Thel Reed, Hannah was on her second movie set. Her first film was The Old Way, in which she received lots of complaints about her handling of guns. Hannah brought her A-game to Rust, and by A-game, I mean her ability to attract complaint.
Welcome to the worst day of my life.
What's the name of the...
Rust.
What's your job there with him?
I'm the armor, or at least I was.
Crew members on set complained that they didn't receive a brief on firearm safety protocols, and the rules that were set out weren't followed well. But Hannah wasn't the only one being criticized by the crew. There was a lot of corner cutting when it came to the occupational safety of the crew, which suggests that safety wasn't a priority. All this came to a head on the 21st of October.
Thursday, October 21st. Baldwin posts a photo of himself in costume on Instagram. Filming continued with a replacement camera crew. Scene 118 in the church.
Everybody there was having a positive experience. They're so hardworking. She goes down. I thought to myself, did she faint?
Baldwin and the other cast and crew were set to rehearse a gunfight taking place inside a church that day, so naturally they needed guns. Hannah retrieved 3 guns from a locked safe and placed them on a prop cart. 2 of these guns were incapable of firing at all, but one of them was a replica Colt 45 that could shoot live rounds. It isn't clear yet how Baldwin ended up with the one gun that could shoot, but the gist seems to be that the gun was only glanced over by the armorer and assistant director David Halls. After the quick look, Halls declared the gun cold and handed it to Baldwin. You probably know what happened from here. Baldwin was practicing ways to draw the gun from its holster, and the gun fired.
She was someone who was loved by everyone who worked with and liked by everyone who worked with and admired. But admired by everybody who worked with her. On the 12th, I had a safety demonstration with Hannah. We spent an hour and a half shooting the pistol, her giving me all her safety instructions. It did not come from me. This came from the DA's office themselves. So if you pull the hammer back and you don't lock the hammer, if you pull the hammer back pretty far, in old Western movies, you'd see someone fan the hammer of the gun.
Helena Hutchins was behind a camera monitor and got struck by the bullet. Despite an emergency medevac to the University of New Mexico Hospital, she couldn't be saved. With that info, here's what I'm wondering. Will the charges stick? In the case of Hannah, they most definitely will. At the end of the day, somewhere along this chain, she will be proven to have been negligent in her duties as an armorer. The fact that a loaded gun ever wound up in Baldwin's hands is an oversight on her part. Any way you slice it, things are less certain for Baldwin. There's no doubt that Baldwin didn't mean to shoot Helena, but he's being charged with involuntary manslaughter. The only way he can escape a guilty sentence is to prove that, within his scope of responsibility and knowledge, there was no way he would have known the gun was loaded. That's the thing I want to figure out today. And to do this, I'm going to set aside Baldwin's personal actions in the wake of the shooting. For instance, I don't think he's doing himself any favors by insisting the gun be discharged by itself, but it doesn't really matter either way. You see, the actor's best bet is to prove that knowing about the condition of a gun isn't his job. In most cases, it'd be a pretty clear-cut defense. On almost any other movie set, an incident like this would fall squarely on the armorer's feet, and the actor would quietly get help for the trauma they've experienced. Filming a movie is a complicated job. Each person has so much riding on them that they basically have to take it for granted that everyone else has done their jobs to the best of their abilities. And when it comes to the movie business, there are so many risks at play. Rust wasn't the first movie to have guns on set that can actually kill people, and it won't be the last. Hannah clearly underestimated her role in keeping the environment safe. If you're someone who has to deal with dangerous equipment and dangerous situations all the time, you can't be all that doubtful. Start questioning the safety of one thing and you'll eventually question the safety of everything, and you can't make movies with such a mindset. These are some of the arguments that I'm expecting Baldwin to put forward as an actor, though I'm sure that they'll sound a lot more complicated in courtroom legalese. But there is, of course, a complicated factor. Baldwin wasn't just an actor, was he? As a producer, Baldwin could be held accountable for what happened in many ways. For instance, why did he hire an inexperienced armorer with a history of poor work ethics? For that matter, why did he hire David Halls, who also had a track record of flouting safety regulations? The biggest question, though, is how live rounds ended up on the set in the first place. You can explain the need for a live gun that shoots blanks, but what's the purpose of live ammunition on a movie set? Here, Baldwin will have to convince the jury that he was just a producer in name. That's a common enough practice in Hollywood. Giving an A-list star a production credit on a movie is something you can put in the trailer to get people to watch. Considering the shoestring budget the movie was being made on, there wasn't much gas in the tank for marketing. Baldwin was probably happy to lend his credibility and star power to the movie's marketing, even if he had nothing to do with the overall production of the film. Will he be able to swing it? He's going to need some serious lawyer power to win this case. But I want to hear from you guys in the comments. How do you think this is going to go? Can Alec, after all this, escape the heat?